our webinar on talent management in education. Today, I'm very pleased to announce that we're being joined by Karen Wiley from the Federation Uni of Australia. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much.
Before we do kick off and get into the nitty-gritty of today's webinar, I'd just like to take everyone through the housekeeping. So first of all, you are in listen-only mode. Please don't take that to mean that you can't participate though. If you look over in the actual box for the go-to webinar, there is a little section there that says chat or questions. At any time, if you'd like to ask Karen or myself any questions, please type them into there and we'll do our best throughout the webinar to answer those for you. We do sometimes get a lot of questions, so please, if we don't get to your question during the actual webinar itself, please don't be offended at all. It's just that we've either run out of time or we've had too many questions come in. What we will do, though, is ensure that those questions are answered by our team post today's webinar. The other thing is that we will keep today's webinar to around the 45 minutes to 50 minutes because we all know that you've all got a meeting booked straight after this or some other activity. So we will try our best to keep it to that time so that you don't get to miss any of the content from today. Also, we will be recording today's session for you. So the recording will be available for you within about 48 business hours. So you'll receive an email from us with details of how to access the recording so that you can re-review at your convenience or share it with your peers as you see appropriate. Okay, well, that's enough of talking about the actual housekeeping component. So let's get into the actual content. And what I thought would be nice is let's have a little chat, Karen, about Federation Uni. Do you mind taking us through?
Certainly. We've been through a very busy time at Federation University for the past 8 months, probably longer if we speak to some of my colleagues that have been very involved in us taking on board the Gippsland campus of the Monash University. Together with that, we also had a name change. We used to be the University of Ballarat, and we're now Federation University Australia. So it's been a massive project for us. It's been a very exciting time. And I think we are all now in the mode where we're really settling down and we're really comfortable with where we are, but knowing as well from an HR perspective, and I'm sure my colleagues in other areas of the university would also know that we still have a lot of work to do to maintain and keep progressing ourselves. We have 5 campuses. We're a regional university, so we've got the Gippsland campus, we've got a campus in 3 campuses in Ballarat, we've got the Mount Helen campus, the Arts Academy at Camp Street, the S&B campus, and then of course we're in the Wimmera as well.
Wow, very diverse.
Very, very diverse, yes. We have approximately 23,000 students. We deliver programs through partner providers and we deliver programs internationally as well.
Yeah, magnificent.
We have a staff complement of around 1,000 staff, fixed-term continuing staff. Our casual and sessional workforce can vary from pay period to pay period.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm sure that our participants on the line can actually associate with diversity, very different diversity though, as well as the fact that what's going to happen for someone like Federation Uni, and you've already started that journey, is you're actually moving with the times and actually having to progress as we start to investigate the actual talent landscape. So it's part of what's happening here. So we know that the global workforce is actually growing, and it's growing quite significantly, and that's having a real impact on the number of college-educated workers that are going to be required across the board. So what sort of impact is that having for Federation Uni?
It is very interesting. We are a very diverse workforce, and we will a bit later on just talk about the different types of positions that we have at Fed Uni. It is very interesting that in certain areas we are already seeing that we do struggle from time to time to recruit. So it's very important for us to have good attraction strategies, good sourcing channels that we look at. Also very important for us to look at retaining our talent.
Fantastic. So we've just got a couple of little statistics there from McKinsey as well, just to support that, these are the sorts of things that organisations or institutions like yourselves are actually watching and taking into consideration when you're going through your change processes. So that's great to see. So let's have a look then about talent management and education. And the reality is it's probably not that much different to small businesses, to corporate businesses and such. It's still all about development. It's all about creating career progress for your people. It's about the future, not just the future of the organisation, the institution, but also the future of your people. And creating leaders, which is a critical component for all organisations. Do those points resonate with you?
Absolutely. Development is very important in our environment. We do have, particularly for our academic staff, which we will touch on today as well, we have a very, very good and clear career progression path for them. And of course, in any environment which is a very specialised environment, it's very important to look at leaders and to develop leaders within those environments.
So I've actually got a quote. When we were working through all of the research for today's webinar, there's a couple of academic papers actually that I got my head into. And Gaines Sims here, as part of a wider paper, we actually pulled this out as something that was very important for talent management and education. And it just re-supports those parts for you and for, I suspect, all corporates as well, and as I said, even small to medium-sized businesses. So what about engagement and motivation? So we see that it's really important in this day and age for there to be transparency in whatever we do from a talent management perspective, that it needs to create motivation and actually take hold of people's potential. Are they, again, some terms and some foundations that you use around your talent management practices?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think in university environments, we are very good in having very clear policies and procedures. We're quite a regulated environment, and we do have very, very clear policies and procedures to help us with those foundations that are important in talent management.
Fantastic. And what we have got there is a quick one here from DeCenzo and Robbins, saying that we actually see that the programs that actually have that transparency are more likely to encourage the motivation of the employees and motivate them to actually then look to continue with you, so retention there, so potentially for additional roles. So it's nice to see that as well. We also know that talent management is becoming a massive priority. And we know that it's beyond financial, so retention isn't just about having the best salary package that you can provide, but it's very much about how you can actually retain your people. And I know this is something that Federation Uni has actually looked into and has taken very much the bull by the horn, so to speak, with your talent management strategies.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's very important for us to ensure that we do retain good talent.
Yeah. And we've actually got a little bit here by Deloitte saying that it definitely supports that fact that it isn't about the package, the remuneration that people actually get, but it's about what you've got in place to actually support retaining people. And there's things like career advancement and recognition. And I know we will get into that more deeper, Karen, as we go through today's webinar. We've also got some other supporting evidence here from Deloitte where performance management is the #1 talent management priority for organisations. Is that surprising to you?
No. I think performance management is probably one of those foundation elements in any talent management strategy. Once you've got the talent in the organisation, what are you doing to make sure that you develop the talent and that you retain the talent? And where you first of all identify who your talent are would be through your performance management. There you would start developing, start identifying what are the areas for development, identify your high performance and start giving that feedback and start looking at how do you retain them.
Fantastic. Well, that's great news. And let's have a bit of a look then at the actual business challenges that you took into consideration that drove Federation Uni to start to look at your talent management practices and your strategy.
Yep. The university sector has gone through some significant changes over the last couple of years. One of the biggest changes has really been around the way in which universities have been funded or are funded now. So we've moved into a demand-driven system. More and more students are now accessing universities, and often we also have students now that would come to universities that have lower ATAR scores. So for universities, the challenge is now to ensure, and Fed Uni is very good at doing this, to ensure that we have several support systems in place for our students. Universities are also very diverse. It's not just about students and learning and teaching. It's also about research, and it's also about engagement with communities. So what we've had to do, because we're so diverse and we're looking at learning and teaching, we're looking at students, we're looking at research, we're looking at engagement, we have to ensure that we have the right talent for those various core functions at the university, and then ensuring that we have good processes, good practices, good policies and procedures in place to retain our talent.
Wow. So, and yes, and as we've been preparing for this webinar, I've been very surprised, I suppose, at just how diverse the university is in all of its aspects, and how you have been, or you've managed to be able to capture that and actually put in place through some structure, which is those policies and procedures and such, a nice foundation for your people to be able to converse with and articulate. So that's fantastic. So let's move off to a poll now and see what sort of challenges those on the line are actually looking at during the actual talent management process for them. So what you can see there is we've got some, this is a multi-choice question, everybody, so you don't have to just select one of them. So we're looking at whether you are having difficulties or challenges around prioritising, which element of the talent management process to address first. You have a desire to do it all at once, but you've got limited resources. How you link those talent management practices or programs to your business results and impacts, and we will definitely go into some detail around that with Karen later on. The requirement of multiple processes due to a diverse workforce, so Karen's very much talked about that so far, or that the market landscape, including competition, is just driving you to have to really react daily rather than actually spend a lot of time on the planning process and building in things like those processes and procedures. So well, it looks like everybody's having fun filling in the actual polls there for us. But while we've got that running, I might just ask a quick question that has come in from the audience, Karen, if you don't mind. And are you seeing a change in the types of people you employ with the changes to the learning delivery that's happening within the university sector, things like online and such?
One of the strategies at Fed Uni is to move into the online delivery space. So definitely we have seen that the types of positions have changed, so requiring more people with technical learning development expertise skills, curriculum designing skills. So the types of positions, but also the types of people that we employ into those positions. So definitely, yes, we have seen a change. It's very exciting to see those changes, and it's also very exciting just having a look at the recruitment space at the moment. Is just in terms of digital presence,
yes,
and the number of positions in that space, and a lot of organisations, corporate organisations, also moving into that space. So that is very interesting.
Yeah. So that keeps it quite dynamic for you, doesn't it? And it's great to see. I love that you use the word "it's exciting" because it can be quite confronting sometimes when there's changes to the workforce and what you'll need to look for. But I'm glad to see that Federation Uni see that as an exciting process. Look. It looks like everyone's had a chance to fill that in, so let's close that poll off and we'll share those results with you now. So what we can actually see there is that, we'll look at that, we've got a dead heat there for the desire to do it all at the same time, which doesn't surprise me there with limited resources, and linking your talent practices and programs to the business results and actually understanding whether they're having an impact. Next off the cab is prioritising which element to actually go with first in the talent management processes. So I can understand that very much so, and we will go through that with Karen today. And the fact that you do have to have those multiple processes, and we will touch on that. Also, the people are seeing that market landscape is actually having an impact on what they're actually having to do, so and take into consideration. So thank you everybody for that. We'll keep moving through with Karen, and hopefully she'll be able to take you through some of the difficulties and challenges that they've been through that she's mentioned just before, and how your approach has actually tackled some of those, and that will cover off some of those other challenges that our participants online are going through.
Yep, we started off many years ago with prioritising recruitment as our first priority, and we've done good work within the recruitment space, and later today we'll talk about the need to now be able to consolidate some of that work, but also to start looking at new ways and different things that we can do. Then approximately 2.5 years ago, we identified that performance management, performance appraisal and development was becoming very important for us. And that probably also coincided with the different landscape that universities are operating in now. So then that became our next priority, and we started working on that. We'll talk a bit later as well that every time we start working on one process, we go, oh, if we start working on this, what are we doing in terms of that? Yep. What are we doing in terms of the next process? So it is often difficult to decide what are you going to prioritize, but you have to listen to the business as well as HR professionals. I think it's very important that we do consult with our stakeholders and ask them what is important for them and what they would like to prioritize. And with a very diverse organisation, you would often find that it's different for different people. And sometimes in one faculty, for example, it could be different as well. It could be, can we look at how do we attract engineers, for example, to come and work in academia, versus I have an issue around research income, so I would like to start looking at training and development within that space. So within one faculty, it could be very different as well. But rely on your other resources around you and your other expertise within the university, within the organisation that you work to help you with that.
Yeah. So that diversity word just keeps coming up, doesn't it? And it means that we can see here that we've got down that you looked at the things that would have the greatest impact for you from a business perspective as well as from an employee perspective. So sometimes you then, I can imagine, having to negotiate with people within the business to actually go, you know, it might be important for you to do this at this time, but we're going to have to concentrate on this because of the greater good. So yes, definitely. Beautiful. Okay. So let's have a bit of a look then around the fact that in our research we found that the colleges and universities should introduce the talent management programs progressively. So that totally supports what you were just saying there, Karen, about it's a lot to take into consideration. You might be tempted to keep pushing out across there, but you've actually gone, no, we're going to do recruitment first, so get the talent in the door. Now we're going to look at performance management, which is about now retain that talent and make sure that they understand, and we're putting the career progression and development opportunities in place. So does this quote from her out there actually resonate with you?
Yes, it definitely does.
Okay, so let's have a little bit deeper look into the actual recruitment focus that you actually looked at and why you did prioritise recruitment as your first step.
I think for most organisations the first step often would be, how do I actually get talent through the door? So it just made sense to start off with recruitment. once we did recruitment, then we started moving on to look at performance management and also to look at promotion, look at career advancement. What is interesting in our organisation or in the university is that because of the diversity in the workforce, we would see that for our academic staff we have a very, very clear career advancement, career progression pathway for them in the university. So academics would start, not necessarily, it depends on at what level they are recruited into the university, but we have a career advancement structure from academic at level A, your lecturer or your researcher, right through to level E, your professorial appointment, your professor at the university. Now with our general staff and professional staff, unfortunately we don't have such a clear career path for them. So what we have done with them is to put processes in place around recruitment that would assist in career advancement for them. So the first one that we look at is for all our positions up until a certain level, and for any colleagues from the university sector that are listening to the webinar, they would recognise the general staff classification standards that have 10 levels in it, so up to a level 8. We would advertise all those positions internally first if the appointment period is longer than 12 months. So it's giving our internal staff the opportunity for career advancement. We also do use secondments, and we second our internal staff for a period of up to 12 months. We use this very well for backfill arrangement. Right. And we don't necessarily put our internal staff for secondment opportunities through a full recruitment process, but we still do require that merit selection is followed, and we do require that there's transparency in the process. And we also use secondments very successful for project work when we have a specific project coming up. So that way we do give career advancement to our general staff. And part of this forms part of that recruitment phase, and we've had to be more creative here because we don't have a promotions process or a career structure for general staff.
I think that is actually magnificent. I know when we were preparing for this, this is one of the things that really blew me away, because I went, this is fantastic that you're actually using recruitment as part of your career development program. And a lot of people would look at recruitment as just getting people in the door and getting them into a role, but you've actually taken it past that. Necessity's made you do that, but you've actually done it, and you're doing it very successfully. So I'm sure people on the line will be writing furiously at the moment and going, that's a great thing to be able to do, to take recruitment to that next level. So thank you for sharing that. That's magnificent. And let's have a look then about your next step then was, as you said, you went into the performance management space, and what were some of the key focus areas for you there?
The performance management, I always say this is my baby at the university. I've really enjoyed working in this space, and enjoyed working with PageUp in this space, because we use the PageUp performance management module for it. And what we've done here is to really try and keep our process very, very simple. We have focused on having flexibility in the process so that we can cover off on the requirements of academic staff for performance appraisal and development, as well as the general and professional staff, and then of course our vet teaching staff as well, because we are a multi-sector university. With our performance appraisal and development system, we call it our performance review and development program. It's initiated by the employee, so the employee will start and they will draft their performance objectives. Of course, supervisors are required to give encouragement. If staff members don't do that, then the conversation is held around what are your objectives, what are you going to work on, what are you going to do that contributes back to the university and helps the university achieve the university's objectives. With academic staff, of course, student evaluations also do form part of performance appraisal, and also forms part of the promotion process, that academic staff do need to provide evidence that they've done student evaluation of teaching and student evaluation of courses.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing then, just make sure I'm getting this right, is you've got diverse workforce, so you've actually had to put in place different processes and procedures to actually, or workflows to actually support that, so that they are capturing those in the academic or the VET or your general professional. But you've been able to then do that for each of them, but keep it still self-driven by each of them.
Yes, we've only got one policy and procedure. We did not put different policies and procedures in around performance management. So we've kept it all in one policy and procedure. But the nuances of how an academic staff member uses the performance appraisal system would be different to how a general staff or a vet teacher would use it.
Fantastic.
Yes. And it is, yes, it is self-driven. We do find sometimes with the lower level administrative positions in the organisation that the supervisors do need to be quite involved in helping staff to develop their performance objectives there,
yes,
and their development objectives as well.
Yeah. Well, you can understand that because that may be the first time they've actually had to do anything along those lines. So I know you've got some great training programs in place to help your people or your managers and supervisors and such actually help their people actually in that space as well.
Yeah, I think it's something that we can do more of in terms of training. I think most organisations would probably say we can do more in the training space, but yes, we do. We've got resources. We do deliver training on performance appraisal as well.
Yeah, and when we were preparing for today's webinar, I had a chat to some of our team that actually, you know, you said before you've worked closely with PageUp people in putting the enabler in place, so that the system in place for your performance management process. And they said to me, Penny, they have been the most, you know, simple client to actually put in place their processes, because you have made it very easy for the individual to actually understand, the manager to understand, or supervisor and such. So congratulations there, because our guys are implementing quite a few. So knowing that you've taken simplicity into perspective, our guys have gone, wow, this is pretty amazing what you've been able to achieve.
I think a lot of HR professionals, and I can remember when I worked in different sectors, I was probably guilty of the same. I think often HR professionals can overcomplicate a performance appraisal system. I can remember I used to work in the financial services industry and implemented a system there with actuaries, and everything was weighted and double weighted. And at the end of the day, you're really diluting your overall score that you're getting. It becomes meaningless. Right. Where, yeah, at Federation University, and a lot of this was driven by the diversity of our workforce, and a lot was probably also driven from the perspective that academics are experts in their areas. Exactly. So we're not going to rate them. So the evaluation is focused on feedback. Right. So we set it up, you have to set it up right at the start, and that's why we focus a lot on using SMART objectives. Yep. So being very specific in what you are going to achieve, look at how you're going to measure it. Is it qualitative? Is it quantitative? Put clear performance indicators in there. Make sure that it's achievable, but ensure there's still enough stretch in it. It has to be relevant to the university. It has to be relevant to your job. It has to be relevant to the faculty in which you work. And then, of course, you have to put a time frame to it. So once you set all of that up right at the start, then your feedback becomes easier as well.
And I know we'll talk a little bit more about the feedback process and how you've been quite inventive around that as well with the team. So thank you for sharing that. What we thought we'd do for everybody is just show you here the person's performance management maturity model, because we know that, and when Karen and I were preparing for this, going, you know, most people start to feel that this is such a big thing, especially in the performance field, to actually put in place, and we try to do everything at once, and you want to be at level 4 there, but you're actually in very good company, because as you can see there, you know, 35% are at level 1, 41% then are at level 2. So, you know, if you're in that level 2 moving towards the level 3, which is about 17%, as I said, I think you must be in very good company, because there's a lot of people that are actually working out how they can actually get performance management to work within their organisation, and therefore not get too bogged down, as I was hearing you say, Karen, around making it too difficult. You know, make it as simplistic as possible so that people can actually get it, so that you start to see that it becomes purposeful and integrated into every day, and then you can take it to that next level of being responsive.
What I find interesting is that when I look at this model, I would be able to say to you, oh, you know what, and I won't name them, you know what, I think some of our schools, some of our faculties could be at level 1, but guess what, I think some of them are actually at level 3. So within your organisation, you would probably be able to see that some are at different levels.
As well, yeah, so that's fantastic, isn't it, to think that this model is so diverse that it actually stays as a performance management model for the processes and such you have in place that might be levelled, but also that you have that diversity again within your organisation, where you have some that definitely embrace this and move with it a lot easier and put in place their own structure to help move up the maturity model there. Thank you, Karen, for that. So we've also got here about the differences employee self-assessment by industry, and this was very we're looking at this to go that the insurance industry, as you can see there at 96%, is actually those that focus more on employee self-assessment. But look at that, the education and not-for-profit organisations, you're right in there as number 2. So that really reinforces the fact that you've now put in place a performance process that is very self-driven, and that your people do self-assess.
They do self-assess, yes. As part of the review process, they would first start off with a self-assessment.
Yeah. So, so it's interesting just to see how other industries are actually looking at the employee self-assessment process. We're then going to have a look at, well, so who are and again, the insurance industry a bit ahead of everybody else when it comes to second line level line managers. So you can see it's really quite predominant out there. But they also sit around the average, or probably just above the average, when it comes to team members and direct reports doing assessment of their actual performance. And when we do look at the education and not-for-profit section, which in this Burson research they bundled those together, you're very close to the actual average in that. How does that resonate with you, Karen?
I did find the insurance very, very interesting for that second level managers. That's really, really way out there, isn't it, at 63%?
Yes.
So I did find that very interesting for that sector. With education and non-profit, often what you would find in universities is that the dean or the executive dean, depending on the university and the nomenclature that they use, would traditionally be the line manager, the supervisor of all academic staff within that particular school or within that particular faculty. But from a day-to-day operational perspective, it could be a deputy dean or it could be a senior discipline leader. But traditionally, the performance appraisals would be done by that second level up. At Fed Uni, what we've done is we've actually pushed it down to deputy deans and down to senior discipline leaders.
Okay. And was there a reasoning behind moving it down to those levels?
Yes, it is to look at ratio of the number of staff reporting to the dean and what is reasonable in terms of quality performance appraisal and quality performance development. And also often executive deans are just a bit that far too removed from the actual discipline area, the actual research, the actual learning and teaching that's happening or engagement that's happening. So yeah, so that was the reason why we've pushed it down. It's probably not the right terminology, but taken it down to more just the one-up manager or the direct manager.
And that's about appropriateness to get the best outcome. Because what I loved there was, this is about who knows and understands the most about that individual and their performance. So don't make it somebody who's far removed.
Yes,
they may be involved in the process at some point, but they may not actually do an actual review. So thank you for that. Now, throughout our discussion, especially around the performance piece, but it also came out in the recruitment piece of your processes. We've talked a little bit about how career development and learning is a critical component. And what I've been quite, I want to use the word surprised, but it isn't actually surprised because it actually resonated really well with me when we were talking about what you're doing in the university around career development and how it's so entrenched within your performance process, and how you use action learning as a part of that. So the thing around the types of stretch assignments that you do, that you create challenging assignments for people, that get challenged by going into secondments and projects and such. But it's also always related around ensuring that they get to perform to their best level, to be successful and such. So can you talk to us a little bit more about some of those action learning type activities?
With the general and professional staff, a lot of the action learning, as you said, Penny, would happen, and when we put it in the context of career advancement, career development, would happen around taking on higher duties for a period of time. So your manager goes on leave or your supervisor goes on leave and you step up and you take on some of their duties. You may not take on the full range of duties, but you may be given, well, while I'm away on leave, can you do X, Y, and Z? Also the secondment opportunities that we spoke about, to backfill other people, or secondment opportunities specifically then into project type work, identifying you've got potential in that area, how about you take on this project assignment for us. So with our general staff, yes, certainly that works well. With academics, academics is all about action learning probably all the time.
Right.
It's about developing new courses, so the peer reviews that happens, you're talking to your colleagues the whole time, you're working with your colleagues. If you think about research as well, it's in the moment.
Right. So that's quite exciting, and we've actually got a quote here for everybody from Clunes that actually really re-emphasises that this is about engaging your people to take them beyond their current skill level, and everything that you're doing in Fed University seems to really support and sponsor this type of thinking, which is fantastic. So let's have a look then at your actual performance management process, and we talked earlier about the fact that it is it's powerful in its simplicity, I suppose is what I'd love to say. Can you take us a little bit through the 3 steps that you actually work with?
Yep. We've got the 3 main stages, which are the stages that our participants will be able to see on their screens there. So we start off by planning, and that's performance planning as well as professional development planning, and that our performance appraisal happens on an annual cycle. So we give staff between 3 to 4 months to actually do the planning. And then from there we go into the monitoring stage, where at any time either the employee or the supervisor can log to the system and they can monitor their progress. We also do look at things changing while you're in the monitoring stage, because we do know that Fed Uni is dynamic, any organisation is dynamic. You start off on this path and then things happen along the way. For example, we have Monash campus that joins us, so things do then impact on performance objectives and professional development objectives that were set. And then from October through until December of every year we go into the review stage. Now the review stage is where the employee would first do a self-assessment. After the employee has done the self-assessment, then the supervisor would do an assessment and meet with the employee, and they would have a good feedback session and discussion around the performance and the development. What went well, what didn't go well, what can we do differently, the lessons learned.
Yeah. And one of the things that really resonated with me when we were planning for today was the fact of how you use the journaling process in that monitoring stage. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, during the monitoring stage, for those who know the performance management module, you've got the journaling function. So at any time, the employee, each individual in the organisation would have their own journal. So they can log into the journal at any time and they can just keep track of their performance. You can sort it by using hashtags. I can remember when I rolled out the system, people said, oh, this is a little bit like Twitter, putting hashtags in front of the various things. So that was great. And you can also email if you get feedback, and we all know we get all that good feedback on a regular basis that gets emailed to us, so we can email our feedback into the journal as well. So it just helps staff to keep track of performance. We've also encouraged our supervisors to use it as well for monitoring their own performance, but also for monitoring individuals' performance. Sometimes when people aren't performing that well, but you don't necessarily want to go and document it yet formally. You just want to keep track of it. You want to start giving the feedback. You want to keep track of it because sometimes people just need the motivation. Somebody just needs to say to them, you're slacking down, what's going on, pull up your socks, to use the journal to note that and not necessarily put it in the performance appraisal. If it doesn't improve, yes, of course, then you want to look at a more formal process or a bit more of a formal way of documenting it.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad to hear that a piece of our functionality is actually promoting and sponsoring your process, your encouragement of your people to actually participate in that monitoring stage, not just see performance as annual. So when I put my objectives in place and talk about my career development, and then let's measure it. So that's fantastic news. We're just quickly going to pop up here the burst and performance management framework, because why we were doing this is because those 3 steps to me actually sit within that middle component there, where burst actually have 4, but I can see that you've actually been able to even simplify that further by that goal setting and reviewing piece being in that first step that you actually have, which is, the planning stage. That development planning actually sits also within that stage. So when you're planning, you do your development plan as well, which is fantastic. So there's that simplification coming in. Then you do your managing and coaching, of course, there, where is that your monitoring stage, and then your review, which is about recognising and rewarding that performance. Yes. So I thought it was great to be able to put up something like the Versa model here to go, this is a great framework, but you can actually even simplify it further and be quite successful in that. So what we might do now is, you and I have been talking quite a bit, let's give the participants an opportunity to actually tell us about what their talent priorities are, so based on what they've been hearing from you today. So we're going to launch another poll there for you. So hopefully you can actually see that poll, and this again is another multi-response. So you can select more than one here, because even though we have put all of the above as an option there, you may be looking at recruitment and performance as Federation Uni have as their first cabs off the ranks, or you might be going, you know what, we've got recruitment down pat, so we're going to move into more things around succession and development. So we'll just give everybody a moment or two to answer that. And while we do, we've had another question come in, so we might quickly cover that off. Do you find that employees are engaged in self-reviewing?
It varies. With our general and professional staff, everyone does it because it's part of the process, and the way in which the system has been set up is that staff first need to complete their particular responsibility before it can move on to their PRDP supervisor or their performance appraisal and development supervisor. So with general and professional staff, I have found that they possibly a bit more hesitant in self-assessment.
Right. And
self-assessment is probably a bit briefer. With academics are specialists, they're experts in their area, so they are much more comfortable in the space of self-assessment. Our vet teaching staff I have found slightly similar to our general and professional staff, where they tend to be a bit briefer as well.
Okay, thank you. I think that's, I'm sure that people on the line can actually empathise with that and see that they've got different people within their organisation who would take it at different levels. So look, it looks like everyone's had a chance there, so let's close that poll off and share the results. And so as you can see there, we've got a dead heat again. Look at that. So we've actually got recruitment and development, and maybe you've influenced some of that with the fact that development can be a part of the recruitment process, as it is at Fed Uni, coming in first, then performance management, succession. A lot of people there, though, that are still looking at, we want to do it all. So, you know, that's fantastic to see that people aren't put off with the fact that this is quite a big endeavour to go or undertake, but it is still very achievable. So thank you very much, everybody, for your participation in that poll. I'm going to keep this moving because I'm just being told, Penny, look at your watch. So apologies for that. So, Karen, can you take us a bit through what actually has been delivered and achieved so far for Fed Uni?
I think we've covered off on a lot of these already. We have had a look at recruitment. As I said, that was the first process where we started having a look at the recruitment space. And every year we've tried to do something else within the recruitment space. For me at the moment, I've got quite a big focus on moving into the social media area in terms of recruitment and sourcing and looking at doing sourcing a bit differently.
Fantastic.
Then, of course, performance management was our next process that we've implemented. And I think when it comes to performance management, it's now time for us probably to do a bit of a stock take on where exactly we are at. We do training around policies and procedures, SMART objectives. The next lot of training that I'd like to roll out is around feedback. Right. And how to give good feedback, corrective feedback, but as well as reinforcing feedback. So someone has done something good, how do I reinforce that and keep them going?
Yeah. So this is very much about how you've actually affected the change process throughout this. So as you said at the beginning, a lot of engagement with the business to get their buy-in to the process. So it looks like a lot of communication. As you've said, training, and it continues to be a priority for you. Looking at what you want to do moving forward with that as well. And that key piece around alignment, so making sure that performance management in particular is very aligned to the business imperatives that the organisation actually has. Is there anything else you'd like to add to how you affected this change?
The only thing that I'd probably say is that you have to consult with your stakeholders in the business if you want to make it work. It was a long process. We did a lot of focus groups. We would go away. We would develop some process. We would go back to them, present the process to them. They go, no, don't like it. We'll go away. We would come back. But if you do not engage your stakeholders, if you do not get their buy-in, then your performance management is not going to work.
Right, and especially when you were putting in a simplified version to help the whole organisation on the journey. To hear you say, don't forget to bring everybody on the journey with you. I think that's a critical component for our audience to remember. Well, I'm going to quickly race us off to another poll because what we'd love to hear is when we talked about what journey you actually want to undertake. Let's see when you want to undertake it. So we've got the opportunity there for you, and this one is actually a single response. So I had to put that in. You're already on the journey, so there'll be a lot of people on the line that are already undertaking this journey of talent management. You're still looking at the priorities because you know you want to do that research. As you said, it was a bit of a journey to actually look at what you wanted to do first, how you would do it, and your planning and such. Some people in the next 6 months, hopefully you want to tackle some things in the next 6 to 12 months, or it's so big, let's look at it in another 12 months, or there's other priorities actually happening in the business. So looks like nearly everyone's actually voted again. We'll just give you another moment or so there. We've got one other question that's probably a little bit back from where we were, but can you tell us a little bit about how successful your maternity leave types of comments have actually been?
Oh, very successful. Yeah, that's probably one of the easiest ones. We know in advance that someone is going on mat leave. We have enough leeway to start looking at potential and who could possibly step up there. Having a simplified selection process, good handover time. When people come back, often people would come back part-time, so it gives that secondee some more opportunity to possibly do a combination role. So, no, they've been very, very successful.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. Let's close that poll off and share the results then for everybody. So it looks like most people are already on the journey. So hopefully what they've gotten from today is some further tips and such to help them on that. And again, that working on those priorities or big, and we've still got other things happening at the moment, so we're going to look at that in the next 12 months or so. Thank you again, audience, for your participation in that. So what we'll do is move on to, I suppose, our wrap-up slide here, which is about what's next then for Federation Uni and the talent management journey.
As I said earlier, it's probably time for us now to really consolidate, just to do a bit of stock taking in terms of recruitment, as well as performance appraisal and development, performance management. And I think we have identified the areas that we would like to work on, where we're lacking and what we need to focus on. So with recruitment, it would be around probably simplifying some of our processes, because I think we started off too big. Well, not necessarily too big, but possibly too complicated. So we thought, oh, that would be a good idea, that would be a good idea, that's also a good idea, and we put all the good ideas into a place, and it's just maybe made our system a bit too complicated. So really looking at simplifying that. With our performance management, it is time to do a bit of more training, as I mentioned earlier, around feedback, and then probably also time to really make that link between what am I doing and how am I contributing back to the university's objectives, to start making that more clear for all of our staff, and doing a bit more in that space. Although we do deliver it as part of our training on how do I do my performance and professional development planning, I don't think we're completely there yet in terms of what, can you really link it back to why are you here and what are you doing to contribute to the university. Also, for me, first, the next big project for me is an online corporate induction program, and I'm sure a lot of participants are there already, but we're not. And then probations. I would like to move probations online, and we've started some work with PageUp in using the performance management module for that.
Oh, fantastic. So you're actually looking at how the performance within that probationary period can actually be captured and managed in the one system.
Yes, yes.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, look, we are running short of time, so I do apologise to the audience. There are a couple of other questions that have come through, but unfortunately, if I keep to our promise of finishing up just before our time to make sure we do get you out for your next meetings and such, those questions that we haven't been able to get to, I'll work with Karen, and we'll make sure that one of our team actually gets back to you on that. So let's close off for today. So thank you so very much for sharing your journey, and your ongoing journey. As you said, it seems to be a continuous improvement process around everything that you're actually implementing at the moment. Good luck with the corporate induction program, and I look forward to hearing how the probation process,
that's very exciting.
Works, and the fact that using the one system, how that can go from there. So just in that final wrap-up, so again, thank you, Karen. Thank you to everybody on the line for your participation today, for your contribution to our polls and such. Another reminder that you will receive an email within about 48 business hours that will direct you to the recording. So if there were bits and pieces of today that you'd like to revisit, you're able to do that, or if you have peers or someone in your network that you'd like to share today's recording with, you're able to do that. So thank you very much, everybody, for today, especially Karen, and we look forward to seeing you on one of our future